Once, people were certain if God spoke, it would be impossible not to hear. The sky would tear like fabric. The earth would shudder as if it were alive. A voice would sound so powerfully, it would stop wars, drown out screams, and force fear itself to fall silent. People looked upward. They waited for signs. They waited for thunder. They waited for a miracle. They believed. When the answer came, there would be no doubt left. But the world changed. Cities became louder than thunder. Sirens do not fall silent. Screens glow brighter than stars. News arrives faster than we can even feel the pain. We hear voices constantly, but we rarely listen. We read thousands of words, yet understand almost none of them. The world screams without pauses, without silence, without rest. And it is in this world that a person falls to their knees, not for show, not for anyone else, but because there is nowhere left to go. They speak in a whisper, or in their thoughts, or without words at all. And in response, nothing. Not no, not yes, not thunder, not a sign. Silence. A silence so deep it begins to press in. So honest it feels more frightening than a scream. And a thought appears, one that comes to almost everyone, but is rarely said out loud. What if no one hears me? What if the sky is silent, not because it is waiting, but because it is empty? And from this moment, the real story begins. Not when God speaks, but when a person decides to remain in the silence or to walk away. We were taught that everything has an answer, that any question is only a matter of time and the right approach, that everything can be explained, sorted into categories, traced back to a cause, and therefore controlled. Every pain, we were told, has a source. Every defeat, a mistake. Every mistake, a correction. If something doesn't work, you must have slipped somewhere. If it doesn't happen, you didn't try hard enough, didn't believe enough, didn't wait enough, didn't do enough. This is how the world raised us. Work and you'll receive. Be good and everything will come together. Do good and good will return. Pray and heaven will answer. It looked fair, convenient, predictable. In that world, it was easy to breathe because it seemed everything was under control. But then a moment came when that logic began to break. People did everything the right way and lost their jobs in an instant. Built for years and lost it overnight. Protected their families and ended up alone. Stayed faithful and were betrayed. They prayed not for excess, not for luxury, but for what was necessary, for bread, for health, for one more day. And in response, they heard only silence. No explanations, no warnings, no instructions on how to fix it. And then something breaks inside. Because if everything was done right, why does it hurt? If everything was honest, why does it feel empty? If the prayer was sincere, why is heaven silent? The world that once seemed ordered suddenly became cold, unpredictable, and incomprehensible. And for the first time, a person feels not only pain, but powerlessness. Not before circumstances, but before the absence of an answer. She woke up, and the first thing she did was grab her phone. Before she knew the time, before she felt her own body. Not because she was expecting a message, but because without it, it was quiet. And quiet was frightening. The screen flashed, and the world began speaking at once. News, comments, advice on how to live, explanations for why it hurts. Other people's thoughts, louder than her own. The world talked without stopping, and that calmed her, for a moment. Once she prayed simply, "God be with me." No perfect words, no formulas, no fear of saying it wrong. And it felt like he was there. Not as a voice, not as a sign, but as presence. As if someone sat beside her in the dark, and that was enough. Then life became fast, adult, exhausting. Bills appeared, responsibilities, people demanding answers, and people disappearing without explanations. Prayer no longer fit between deadlines and fatigue, between I have to and I can't. Later, she would say, later. After this call, after this week, when it gets easier, but later never came. The phone was always close. God somewhere farther away. Not lost, just postponed. Sometimes late at night when the screen went dark and the world finally fell silent, she caught herself with a strange feeling, as if someone was waiting. Not with reproach, not with demands, just silently. And she turned away because she didn't know what to say after such a long pause. Today, when it hurts, we don't look for God, we look for an answer. Fast, clear, one that fits in a paragraph or a 30-second video. We look for people, experts, therapists, comments under posts, articles titled 5 Reasons You Feel This Way and 7 Steps to Feel Better. We ask search engines, algorithms, artificial intelligence. And this is not evil, not betrayal, it is survival. Because when it hurts, we don't want truth, we want relief. Not a path, but an exit. And the world taught us, if the answer doesn't come immediately, you simply haven't searched hard enough. Over time, we grew used to believing everything has an explanation. Every state, a name, every fear, a cause, every wound, an instruction. We learned to live as if silence were a system error. And when all the words are spoken, all the advice read, all the videos watched, and the pain remains, we sigh and say, God is silent. But maybe the problem isn't silence. Maybe God didn't stop speaking. Maybe we stopped waiting. We learn to listen only to what speaks quickly, loudly, confidently, without pauses. But God never shouted. He never competed with noise. He never rushed. His voice always came after silence, through silence, and to those who did not run from it. And perhaps the most frightening question is not why God is silent, but whether we still have the patience to hear a voice that does not hurry. And then a night arrives that conversations cannot solve. Not the kind of night when you can message someone and get, I'm with you. Not the kind where advice helps, or one more outside thought. This is a night in which words stop working. People get tired, even those who truly wanted to help. Even those who always found the right phrases. The best friends grow quiet because they don't know what to say, and they're afraid to say the wrong thing. The smartest advice runs out. Explanations no longer warm you. Logic no longer holds. And you lie there with open eyes. No phone, no messages, no noise that usually rescued you. The darkness doesn't crush you, it simply is. Like a truth you can no longer escape. And for the first time in a long while, there is only silence. Not the silence where you can rest, but the silence where you can finally hear yourself. God, you say, if you exist, why are you silent? No perfect words, no faith in how it should be. Almost in anger, almost in tears, and here the truth matters. You don't want God, not closeness, not presence. You want an answer. Clear, understandable, something you can endure, like people give, like machines give, without mystery, without waiting. You want to know, why is this happening to me? When will it end? What did I do wrong? Because an answer means control, and without control, it's terrifying. And right here is the line people rarely name, the line between faith and demand, between be with me and explain it to me. And the silence does not disappear. It doesn't offer instructions. It doesn't justify itself. It doesn't defend itself. It simply remains. And the question is no longer whether God will speak, but what you will do if he doesn't say a single word. But God does not speak that way. Not like a system, not like customer support, not like a search engine that delivers an answer in a fraction of a second. He is not a function, not an algorithm, not a solve the problem button. You cannot come to him with the right phrasing and a guaranteed result. Because prayer is not a query. Prayer is a relationship. And in relationships, there are no automatic answers, no templates, no obligation to explain everything at once. In relationships, sometimes there is silence, sometimes a look, sometimes just staying close when words are gone. We're used to a world where silence means absence, where if there's no reply, you're being ignored, forgotten, abandoned. But with God, it's different. His silence is not cold, not indifferent, not empty. It is the silence of presence, like a room where someone is there even if they don't speak. And you feel it, not with your mind, but with your heart. Real relationships do not always give answers, but they always show who remains when the answers run out. And perhaps that is why God so rarely speaks in the ways that are convenient for us. Because his goal is not to soothe us with words, but to teach us to be with him even when words are gone. And here faith stops being a tool and becomes trust. Not, I know, but I remain. Not explain, but be with me even in the silence. And here comes a realization that hurts more than silence. We often aren't seeking God. We are seeking relief. Not presence, but anesthesia. Not relationship, but results. Not be with me, but make it stop hurting. This doesn't make us bad, it makes us human. Because pain frightens us. Because uncertainty exhausts us. Because living without guarantees is terrifying. But God does not always remove pain. Sometimes he removes illusions, and that is more frightening. Because illusions protected us. They gave us a sense of control. The belief that if we do everything right, we can avoid loss. The illusion that the world is fair in every moment. That faith is insurance. That prayer is a contract. And when these illusions collapse, reality is exposed. A reality with no guarantees, no promise of an easy path, no formula to avoid pain. There is only a choice: to be with God without conditions, without bargaining, without demanding explanations, or to walk away because he did not meet our expectations. And here faith stops being comfortable. It becomes dangerous because it no longer promises protection. It offers trust, not because everything is good, but because he is near, even when it hurts. And perhaps the true miracle is not that pain disappears, but that you stop hiding behind illusions and still remain. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is space where faith stops being conditional. No if, no bargaining, no deadlines for God. And only one question remains: will I stay if the answer never comes? And now you no longer ask. You say, I don't know what's right. I don't know what comes next. But if you are here, stay with me. No demands, no expectations. This is not victory, it is honesty. And perhaps God does answer, not with a voice you can record, not with a sign you can prove, not with words that remove every question. His answer comes differently. It doesn't change circumstances immediately. It doesn't erase pain. It doesn't turn back time. But something changes within you. You are still in the same room, in the same night, with the same questions. But you are no longer alone in the silence. It is no longer empty, not cold, not hostile. It holds you. Not everything will be fine. Not I'll explain everything. Not here is the answer. But something simpler and harder at the same time. I am here. And that is enough to keep you from breaking. You receive no guarantees, no plan, no explanation of why. You receive the strength to survive one more night, to take one more step, to breathe when it felt like the air was gone. Not you won't fall, but I will lift you. Not it won't hurt, but you won't be alone in it. And perhaps this is how God answers most often. Not as we expected, but as we can endure. Not by changing the world at once, but by staying with us as we learn to live in it without illusions, but not without hope. And when morning comes, you still don't have all the answers. But you have something more important. You endured. People think God is silent when he doesn't fit their rhythm, their speed, their deadlines, their demand for now. But God has never rushed. He doesn't compete with the world's noise. He doesn't shout over screens. He doesn't fight for attention. He waits. He waits until you grow tired of other people's answers, of advice that doesn't save, of words that sound right but never reach the heart. Because not every answer is a sound, and not every answer is a word. Sometimes the answer is silence. Silence in which you no longer cling to control, to explanations, to the illusion that everything must make sense. Silence in which you let go of everything except him. Not because it got easy, but because there is nothing else left to hold on to. And if you are there right now, in that silence, without guarantees, without answers, without the feeling of victory, this is not defeat. It is not the end of faith. It is its purification. Perhaps this is the beginning of a faith that no longer needs proof, doesn't demand explanations, doesn't bargain. A faith that doesn't shout, doesn't argue, but simply stays. Because sometimes the deepest prayer is not words, but the decision not to leave when God is silent. And that is enough.